Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome, everybody, to the Marco Jure Show. It is Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. Thanks for tuning in today's show to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Please don't forget to follow the show and share with whomever needs to hear the truth in our quest to unwoke America. And again, thank you to those that have been doing that already. I appreciate you so much. Hope everyone's ready for the best hour radio has to offer. Uncensored and ready to go. Let's get going. Let's keep the week going strong here. Let's get down to business today. I've got so much to talk about. I got such great articles for each and every one of you. So let's get right into this first one I've got. Paul Craig Roberts. You know, I always like to go to see what he thinks first about a lot of these foreign affair issues that we see here. And he's talking about the Putin and Trump meeting that's supposed to be taking place this week in Hungary, which again, it's a set of relief for me. That we're actually seeing diplomacy. We saw none of this during the Biden administration. Nothing. I mean, it got so bad at one point that I think the ambassador to the United States from Russia just went and left the country, and no one was speaking to them. No one was talking to them. Now, I don't like the way that we've handled some of these issues between, obviously, the Ukraine war and what have you. Things that we've threatened upon as of late, like sending Tomahawk missiles. But I think Trump is starting to figure out that he's kind of getting boxed in a corner here. And he does not want to be the person that is seen as in the losing end of this. He wants to see that he's kind of off with a clean slate here. That he's working towards peace and that peace is achieved. And he's not going to be the one saying, oh, look, you've spent all this money on this war and it only resulted in greater loss for Ukraine and NATO itself. But the meeting now that we have between President Trump and Vladimir Putin in Hungary, assuming that the pre-meeting negotiations between the envoys of the two presidents gets that far, is likely the last chance that we have for peace instead of war. What does he mean by this? Well, he's talking about a war between, obviously, NATO and Russia. It is heating up to that point, folks. Don't think that it's not. We've already seen false flags with so-called drones flying into Poland from Russia. That's a complete and utter lie. We have other nations declaring Article 5. Again, that if one NATO country is attacked, they're all attacked, so they're all going to war. This is how easily things get out of hand with this. So I'm very happy to see that President Trump is going to meet again. The Alaskan summit was not very successful, obviously. So I'm glad that they're actually going to sit down and talk again. Trump, as of late, though, is actually coming around to the idea that Ukraine cannot win this war. There's zero chance for this. And again, he probably consults with very anti-Russian counterparts in our government that want a war between the United States and Russia. Obviously, the military security industrial complex wants it. But that would be very, very bad for us, I'd have to say. So obviously an agreement between the two presidents would require large adjustments in position for one or the other or for both. And I seem to think that it's going to be for both in this. I don't think Trump just wants to give anything away to Russia. That's just the way I see about it. Now, either Trump would have to come to this understanding that, and really accept that the solution is to get NATO off of Russia's borders and agree to a mutual security agreement between Russia and the West, or Putin would have to give up his goal of a mutual security agreement that brings an end to this hostility, sanctions, ceaseless provocations of Russia. That's what we're seeing. Now, again, how likely are Trump's envoys for Ukraine, like General Keith Kellogg, who keeps going out there? Every time I see him, it's always Russia should be doing this. Russia should be past the Dnieper River here. If Russia were strong, they wouldn't have waited this long to go. I mean, he's such an idiot. Yeah, I hate to say that about Saudi, but it's stupid. Vladimir Putin doesn't want that region. He's made that very clear. He doesn't want all of Ukraine. He doesn't give a damn about all of Ukraine. But there he is, every single day. Russia should be doing this. We should be giving Ukraine this. Look at how much they're deterring Russia. They're not. And of course, they're lying about the casualties of Russian soldiers as well. We know it's anywhere from, the Ukrainian casualties are anywhere from 12 to 20 times more than that of Russia's. Just thought I'd share that with you as well. We've also got Steve Witkoff in there. But also on the Russian side, we have Putin's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev. Again, another similar person, but on the Russian side, of course. He represents kind of the Russian business interest whose contacts are in the West. And again, he has very few, if any, connection to the BRICS organization. So again, people that are on each side of these presidents are working to serve their own agendas, their own interests, not the best interests of the nations itself, which again is a major, major problem. But, we have Kellogg, an international business interest to him would be serving those interests. Witkoff, a billionaire real estate developer, and at times seems to represent Israel. And obviously, the rebuilding of what's happening in Gaza is in Trump's ear on this, too. Now, again, none of the three envoys have any comprehension of the depth or the danger of Russia's insecurity with missiles positioned on a long front along Russia's border. That's another major problem with this. Dmitriev, like the American envoys, wants concessions from Putin that would allow Russian business interests to be working with Western ones. Now, consequently, they would be working for the interest and not for removing the threat that is Russia's concern. That's what Putin's concern is about all this. He doesn't want us on their doorstep. That was the whole idea of NATO. And again, I encourage everyone who's listening, go look at the original NATO states. I believe it was 12. Yep. And then we had the Warsaw Pact, of course, including all these nations. Now many of them are members of NATO. Now we have Ukraine wanting to join NATO. It just never ends. And again, Putin sees this risk. He does not want to be invaded. He does not want to be in missile range between NATO countries. That's the whole purpose of the whole thing. That's why he doesn't want Zelensky to join NATO. That was one of the whole reasons that sparked this whole chaos. Now, perhaps if American foreign policy commentary focused on the real problem and spent less time demonizing Russia and, of course, exposing Russian military and economic vulnerabilities, something positive might happen here. But again, there's no sign of commentary that details this with any type of real solution. Everyone's got their heads in the sand, it seems. Where is the diplomacy from America on this, though? Aside from President Trump. Again, I've told you before, I believe President Trump wants peace. I think he is seeking peace. But he's got people on his side. Most of them are yes men. But they also have their own interest as well. And they're the ones chirping in his ear about all this. Now, simply ending the Ukraine conflict and agreeing to the territory reincorporated into Russia is Russian, does not end the security threat presented to Russia from having NATO and U.S. missile bases on Russia's border. That's why it was so insane to me that when he made this claim last week that he was thinking about sending Tomahawks to NATO. Hey, why are we further escalating this war? Why are we prolonging this? There's no reason for it at all. If President Trump and President Putin do not walk away from this meeting in Hungary with a mutual security agreement and end all these provocations from both sides, by the way, mostly coming from the NATO sides, then I don't know how this war is going to continue on. It's going to continue on and get worse. There'll be some type of false flag event where someone says, we've got to go help Ukraine. We've got to do this. And we see the war getting escalated, bringing more people in. And we've come to a couple occasions where that's already been so. Now, one thing that's a positive that I've read, this is in the Gateway Pundit, and this was yesterday, It said that a high-level phone call was held between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and the Russian side characterized the call as constructive. And from U.S. officials, the same cautious optimism was also expressed. So maybe something good is in the works. Maybe something good's happening. Maybe they're finally realizing we can't win this war no matter what we do. And by the way, I'll just remind everybody very quickly, if we were to send Tomahawk missiles, you'd have to have American boots on the ground to run them, because Ukrainians don't know how to do that. Not that they're stupid. I'm just saying they don't know how to operate this weaponry. So is Donald Trump really going to send American boots and put them on the ground to deploy Tomahawk missiles into Russia? Again, it's just mind-boggling that this would even be considered. So let's pray, everyone. Let's pray this week that something positive comes from this, something actually constructive, not just a meeting like last time in Alaska, where we were not prepared at all. We're, again, flexing our Air Force. I don't know what that all was. Again, I like that we're sitting down and talking. I want it to be constructive, though. I want it to actually reach conclusions and meet solutions that will stop this conflict. We don't want any more dead Ukrainians. We don't want any more dead Russians. We don't want NATO getting in this war, which it never should have in the first place. And I'll remind you again, I've always reminded you of this. I'll remind you one more time. This war would have been over a month after it began in February of 2022. Would have been over had not it been for Boris Johnson of the UK and the wonderful Joe Biden scrapping a peace plan between the two countries. This is why we're edging our way closer and closer and closer to a major world war. And you can thank both of those jerks for that too, by the way. Unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. But this is where we are in this conflict. I want Trump to go and meet. I want them to have a reasonable conversation about how to end this war as soon as possible. What would make Russia stop? Where is the security agreement for NATO and for Russia? Where are even boundaries where we can coexist with one another? That's what should be discussed at this meeting. I hope, again, just maybe it's my prognostication. I don't know. But it's sounding like the Americans are starting to figure it out, that this is not a war we're going to win. And how much more money are we going to put into this? And it needs to stop as soon as possible. So, let's pray. I'm praying. I hope you're praying too, that this ends quickly, sooner rather than later, and does not expound into a greater war in the entire region. Again, we can't take them on, too. That's another big problem with this, too. None of those NATO countries are going to go in unless the United States come in. If the United States goes in, it's going to be an insanely chaotic war, one that we've never seen before. Just the News has an article. It's announcing that J.D. Vance had opening statements in U.S.-Israel Civilian Military Cooperation Center to rebuild Gaza. Now, I had to stop and read this one. And obviously, we all know that he was on his way to Israel yesterday. But he says that we are 1 week into President Trump's historic peace plan in the Middle East, and things are going, frankly, better than I expected they were. Now, I stopped and I said, I had to read it twice. I said, really? This is going better than he expected? Israel not even holding up its end of the ceasefire on day one? Hamas is still armed? How's this going as you expected? I mean, maybe he thought it was going to go chaotic even quicker. I don't know. But, I mean, clearly this is not a ceasefire that's being upheld the way we expect it to be. So Vice President J.D. Vance on Tuesday announced the opening of a U.S.-Israeli Civilian Military Cooperation Center in Israel's city of Kiryat Gat to rebuild Gaza. Now, let's pause again here. I thought Israel was supposed to have nothing to do with this. I thought they were supposed to exit Gaza completely. And there was supposed to be, obviously, some type of security coalition. Obviously, there was supposed to be a board of peace, an international board as well. Tony Blair was said to be on it. Donald Trump was supposed to be on it. But there was not supposed to be any Israel. So I don't understand what they're talking about here. A U.S.-Israel Civilian Military Cooperation Center. Why is Israel even involved in this? They're supposed to be gone. Now, he spoke days after a U.S. brokered ceasefire deal between the two countries. But again, we're, I believe, 9 days into this. And look at the chaos. We already have 38 dead Palestinians. We have humanitarian aid not going into the region anymore now. Israel just decided that. And I read to you yesterday that the explosion of an unexploding IED went off, largely probably because a bulldozer or something ran over a IED that hadn't gone off, causing an explosion. Thankfully, no one was killed. But that gave them the go-ahead, the green light to go in and say, okay, time to start the bombing campaign again. You saw Ben-Gvir say the same thing. He told the prime minister, go full strength into this now. So the war has not stopped. The conflict hasn't stopped. Even early as the end of last week, we saw 7 different Palestinians, not Hamas, killed in Gaza City. What's all this nonsense about? So the idea that he's saying this is going as expected, I don't know what he expected. But this certainly isn't any good, I'd have to say. But he went on to say this, too. He said, here at the civilian military, again, who's a part of this? Is this the IDF? Is this just civilians inside Israel in America? I don't understand this. Here at the Civilian Military Cooperation Center, which we are announcing the opening of, you have Israelis and Americans working hand in hand to try to begin the plan to rebuild Gaza, to implement a long-term peace, and to actually ensure that you have security forces on the ground in Gaza, not composed of Americans, who can keep the peace over the long term. Again, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Why are Israelis and Americans involved in being in part of this security cooperation team? We have no idea who's even rebuilding this. Where are they getting the money to rebuild this? That's what I want to know. Vance said there's still a lot of work to do. It's going to take a very, very long time. Well, no kidding. 85% of Gaza is in complete and utter ruins. We all knew that. While praising the efforts of Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, who desperately wants to rebuild the area and become rich off it, and Admiral Brad Cooper, the head of the U.S. Central Command, on the deal's implementation. Well, again, who's implementing this anymore? Is anyone what is the next stage of the phase that's supposed to happen? What are the next steps that are supposed to be implemented now? Why are they not being implemented? Now, again, if Hamas is supposed to be disarmed, why is it not happening now? It seems we started off on the right foot, releasing the hostages, releasing the prisoners, and then all of a sudden it just completely fell apart. Nothing else was known when to happen. There was no real timeline. Obviously, the Hamas group is trying to send back the deceased bodies. But again, when you have a country that 85% of it's destroyed, obviously one can understand that it would be difficult to locate some of them. Just being honest with you. And again, it makes no sense for them to hold on to dead bodies. That has no pull for them whatsoever. And again, we've already seen the idea of firing at people as early as last week. There's still bombings going on in Lebanon. Yep. So where is this ceasefire? Where is this peace that we're supposed to be seeing? He said that the past week has given him great optimism. Really? Maybe he's watching something different than I am. I don't know. I really don't know. It doesn't seem to be making much of any sense to me, though. I don't understand about this military cooperation center. I don't understand where did that come from? There's supposed to be a international security team involved to ensure peace in the region, which had nothing to do with Israel. So I don't understand why we have Israeli troops on the ground. And why do we have American troops on the ground? We should have other Arab state nations on the ground working, again, for the security agreement between the two territories. That's what we should be seeing right now, to ensure Israel's security and the security of Gazans. Now we just have American and Israelis on the ground. Again, I just told you there were 38 people killed already since this ceasefire took place. Again, is this a success? I can't see this as a success. But again, we're seeing this play out. They're telling you it's great, but really it's completely falling apart. Really, that's the way I see this. I don't understand why the plan should have really had Israel and Hamas together and agreeing this. Instead, you had the United States and the Gulf Arab states coming together and say, this sounds great, let's implement it. Let's sell it to these other two and see how it goes. I told you before, I never expected Hamas to, again, fully disarm. I would never expect that. They have no way to defend themselves now. The Palestinians have no way to defend themselves. And really, they only have really rifles to defend themselves. They have some RPGs, maybe some homemade bombs. But the idea that they're, firing missiles into this region where, past the yellow line, where is the IDF is, it doesn't make any bit of sense to me if they're still going with that. So anyways, I don't think things are going well. I don't think we'll see the peace last. That's just my take on it. Maybe you think so. I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can, but I don't think that each side is certainly not holding up their end of the bargain here. And again, there's no real timeline for all this to take place. We've already heard that Israel is not going to accept a Palestinian state. So why would I expect this to have a good outcome in the end? And again, Hamas knows this. Hamas sees this. The Palestinians see this. They see what's going on. But all of a sudden, they completely shut down aid going in. When there's supposed to be 600 trucks, there's only 150 trucks going in from the UN. And now yesterday they blocked off all aid going in the region. So there you go. We'll see if that ever resumes too. It's unbelievable, isn't it, folks? Really unbelievable that these two conflicts continue to get out of control. They continue to escalate. And there seems to be no end in sight. The other problem we see now, this is in the New York Post, it says that Defiant Curtis Sliwa refuses to drop out of mayoral race under no circumstance. Well, this just solidifies Mom Dummy. Mom Dummy will win if Sliwa stays in the race. He has no chance to win. I'm sorry to tell you that. I know a lot of you think, well, Sliwa's the best candidate. Well, yeah, he is the best candidate. He has no chance to win. You've got to think realistically on this. Okay, and much as it pains me to say this, Andrew Cuomo would be the better of the two candidates to win between him and Mom Dummy. And again, if Mom Dummy wins, goodbye New York City. So again, how much do you love New York City? I don't know. But Sliwa was approached by several influential Republicans issuing a plea for Sliwa to drop out of the race and again to unite behind Andy Cuomo. We saw Eric Adams drop out of the race already. Again, he was polling at 8%, 9% at best. So, obviously, those 9% are probably more than likely going to go to Cuomo. Now, if Sliwa drops out of the race, the 25 or so percent that he has obtained is likely going to go to Cuomo as well. They're not going to vote for a communist, I don't think, the Republicans of New York City. So you got to look at this from a realistic perspective. Can Sliwa win? The answer is no. Can Cuomo win? The answer is yes, if Sliwa drops out. If not, those two are just going to cut up the little bit of rationale people in New York City and again hand it over to the naked communist, right? Who just we just saw pictures of him with that imam who was championing the attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. Oh, yeah. You wait till you see what he's got installed for you, folks. It's going to be a real doozy in New York City. But yeah, if Sliwa stays in, you have a mayor Mom Dummy. You have your first mayor Mom Dummy. And again, I like Sliwa. I think he's a good candidate. Obviously, my values align closer with him than anyone else's. I'm not a fan of Cuomo either, but at least Cuomo understands you can't be full-on communist and just say free this, free that, free buses, free grocery stores, freeze the rents, let's have prostitution, let's decriminalize drugs, let's get rid of police. You ain't seen nothing yet, folks. You ain't seen nothing yet. And of course, he's going to do anything he can to push back on the Trump administration, their policies, all that. So it's going to become a refuge for criminals, which it already pretty much is. And it's going to become a refuge for illegal aliens, which it pretty much already is. So it's going to get even worse. And maybe Trump cuts off funding. How's that going to look for our biggest city in the country, folks? You're going to kill tourism by so much because people are not going to go to an unsafe, disgusting city like that. Why would they do that? Why would you do any of this? It's going to be scary, folks. It really is. I don't really know much more to say about this. I told you before, Adams and Sliwa should have dropped out a long time ago. They should have gotten behind Cuomo. And they should have said, listen, make us something in your campaign, in your administration, so our people know that, okay, we're a part of this too. We'll have some say in this, so our voices are heard. And that would have been a good idea. Then people would be a little bit more, okay, we'll give Cuomo a try because we're not going to vote for a communist. That's how you unite behind somebody. Or are you to lose your city? And you're very, very close to losing your city, folks. I'm sorry to tell you that. Again, I told you haven't seen anything yet. Right now, he's all smile. He smiles. He says, hey, oh, yeah, I really want to do this. The free this, the free that. He's with, the Bernie Sanders approach to everything. It's not going to work, folks. We've seen it not work before. Communism does not work. Socialism does not work. Decriminalizing drugs doesn't work. Prostitution doesn't work. Allowing illegal aliens to flood your city doesn't work. Heck, even when they were sending them from, where were they sending them from? I think Martha's Vineyard. Yeah. Martha's Vineyard got 50 of them. They sent them back to New York. They couldn't even handle that. They were overwhelmed. You had people sitting outside the Roosevelt Hotel waiting to get a room after they were kicking out U.S. military veterans. Nice, huh? The illegal alien gets a vacancy. Oh, no, they got to go in there. You got to put them in there, folks. You have to. You don't want to be called a racist. Yep, no vacancy, though, for our soldiers, though, right? Wonderful. Absolutely disgraceful, if you ask me. All right, let's move on. The Federalist. I got to talk about this, too. This story, again, is going to be getting out of control pretty soon, I'd have to say. It says here that the House Judiciary Committee refers John Brennan now to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. Yeah. It's about time, isn't it? He's one of the masterminds behind this whole thing, too. Obviously, we saw Dim Comey going down, as he ought to. But John Brennan, like Dim Comey, was in charge of the CIA at the time. Comey was in charge of the FBI. But now they're coming to the realization, of course, and we've known this because I've talked about this on the show previously, that Brennan lied, just as Comey lied, to foment this entire Russia collusion hoax. That's just what it was. So we have the House Judiciary Committee now referring former CIA under Hussein Obama, John Brennan, to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution on Tuesday over allegations that he knowingly made false statements to Congress in his role in the Russia collusion hoax. That's all true, by the way. We know that's true. And Jim Jordan went on to say that making false statements before Congress is a crime that undermines the integrity of the committee's constitutional duty to conduct oversight. So he knowingly lied. And obviously he should be held accountable for this. So we've got this referral that highlights numerous instances where Brennan allegedly issued untrue remarks when testifying before the Judiciary Committee back in May of 2023. Now, I went back and did some sleuthing on all this, and I found this great article in the New York Post from Miranda Devine, who did a hell of a job on this, by the way. And she just lays it out perfectly. She essentially says that he's opened himself up to perjury charges. This is Brennan, of course. And we've got an email that was uncovered in a scathing review by the CIA career professionals of the agency's 2016 Trump-Russia collusion assessment. Now, Brennan is said to be, under renewed scrutiny by authorities over discrepancies between his sworn testimony to Congress, to federal investigations, and his written orders to underlings conducting the Intelligence Community Assessment commissioned by Barry Obama in December of 2016 that found Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential campaign to help Donald Trump. Well, obviously today we know that this is completely false. There was no intelligence at all that suggested that this was true, yet they ran with it completely. And of course, Donald Trump had his first, 2 years in office, under scrutiny about this, nonstop. He couldn't even take a breath without them bringing this up, calling him illegitimate and what have you. And it didn't stop there, of course. It continues on today. But the declassification of this email found that Brennan insisted on the inclusion of the discredited Christopher Steele dossier from Fusion GPS. He was a British intelligence officer where Hillary Clinton bought and paid for this dossier. Again, this is over the strong objections of the CIA's two most senior Russian experts, who said that it did not meet the even most basic tradecraft standards. Yet, Brennan went on and said, he said it formalized in his position in writing, stating that my bottom line is that I believe that the information warrants inclusion in the report. So he wanted it added to the report to give it some more life. That's what it was. Again, this was baseless. There was nothing to back this up. And yet it became one of the focal points of this whole thing, which pushed it out of control. They kicked the can down the line to a damn Shiftless who ran the investigation in the basement of the Capitol, pushing the narrative. I've seen this information. I've seen that information. None of it was true, folks. None of it was true. The 2023 special report, also by special counsel John Durham, stated the FBI was not able to corroborate a single allegation contained in the Steele report. So then how come John Brennan is saying, I think this is necessary to add into this intelligence assessment? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. So that ICA, we have this information, again, damning at the time, but it had no basis. They couldn't corroborate it with anything. It was completely made up. So you have Obama and Hillary at the top, channeling this down to the next two dimwits. You have Dim Comey, and of course you have John Brennan, and then they kick the can down to a damn Shiftless who ran it out of the Congress, ran in the papers with all this. The press kept saying, we've got information, I've seen this, I've seen that. Then you go to the Mueller investigation, it's like, there's nothing there. And that was it. Really? There's nothing there? He said there was something there all the time. So again, the decision to include the Steele dossier in the assessment ran counter to any type of fundamental tradecraft principles and ultimately undermined the credibility of key judgment. That's what it was. That's what they all pushed. They should all be found guilty on this because that's what they did. And again, they lied to the American people. So here's how she ends it up. She says, including the dossier reference in the main body of the intelligence community assessment, implicitly elevated unsubstantiated claims to the status of credible supporting evidence. This is why people said, oh my God, this is true. Vladimir Putin interfered in the election. He didn't change one damn vote, folks. Donald Trump won the election. I know it's hard for Democrats to understand, but he won. He beat Hillary Clinton. Yeah, there you go. And again, compromising the analytical integrity of the judgment. Yeah. Yep. But again, you have under his testimony in May 23rd, 2017, Brennan claimed that the Steele dossier wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence information that we had. It was not used in any way as the basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. Now, we know that's not true because the Steele dossier was forced into the ICA by Brennan. And it appeared not just in the annex, but was referenced in the main body of this report that ended up triggering an investigation by Robert Mueller. So you had the first 2 years of the first Trump administration, and again to delegitimize his victory in 2016. That's what it all was, folks. To put Donald Trump under scrutiny, put him under pressure. You're going to get impeached. You're not even the real president. You didn't win. We saw this weekend, too, at the No Kings protest. You know, right? Saying he's illegitimate. He's not my king. He's not my president. He didn't win. And we're seeing this time and time again. You saw the clowns and the, Hollywood actors out there doing the same damn thing. We'll get to that in a little bit. Don't worry. Actually, let's get to it right now. Why don't we? Let's jump right into it. Head first. ZeroHedge, as an article says, Stage 5 Trump derangement syndrome. Yep, good old deranged Bobby. De Niro calls for leftists to fight it out with Nazis. Now, I gotta stop for a second. I grew up on De Niro's movies. I love a lot of his stuff. I don't understand where this guy's gone. Where did this happen? That this guy is so unhinged that he simply makes up stuff like this. It's mind-boggling. He was on MS Nobody Cares, and he went on to call the Trump administration Nazis. And he said that leftists need to fight it out with, again, referring back to violence. I told you this yesterday. We talked about dumb Lemonhead calling for black and brown people to arm up, legally, of course, to take out ICE. Now they got Robert De Niro coming out saying, you need to fight it out. They're Nazis. Fight it out with them. Donald Trump is Hitler. These are all the things that they use, these pejoratives they throw out there. Yep, fight it out with him because otherwise the president will not leave the White House. We heard this the first time. Right, Donald Trump's not going to leave. He's saying Joe Biden stole the election, which he pretty much did. That's my belief. I'm sure some of you don't believe it. Yeah, I'm sure Joe Biden was the most popular person of all time to run for office, folks, right? The guy who could only get 20 people tops to show up to rallies of his, while Donald Trump was pulling thousands upon thousands of people everywhere he went. Yeah, but you were told Donald Trump lost. Joe Biden's the most popular guy. 81 million people went out to vote for Joe Biden. Guy couldn't finish sentences. He was lost half the time, made up words. Yep. They handed out mail-in ballots to everybody in the country. We know how fraudulent that could be. And, of course, we know that they can rig these election machines that are electronic. But I digress. Here's what old Bobby said. Take a listen to this. I want you to take a listen to this, and then I want you to tell me what you think about this. Again, he doesn't base anything he's saying in any type of reality. He's asked on MS Nobody Cares. I think he's on Jonathan Capehart's show, if anyone watches that anymore, which I highly doubt. Yeah, that's why he went on. Nobody watches it. He didn't think anyone would see this. He's asked about what he thought about the No Kings protest over the weekend. Take a listen.
It tells me that I'm very happy to see that because we need much more of it going forward because that's the only thing that the politicians are going to recognize. They either face the wrath of Trump or the wrath of the people. And they have to be more afraid of the wrath of the people and realize this is not good. I better strap on my balls and do something about it.
Do you think they got that message that's going to resonate with them as the week comes into?
It has to. We can't let up. Cannot let up on it because he is not going to leave the White House. He does not want to leave the White House. He will not leave the White House. Anybody thinks he'll do this, he'll do that is just deluding themselves. The Republicans most of all, because they know, but they're going along with it. It's a classic bully situation. We see it, and there's no other to face a bully. You have to face him and fight it out and back him off and back him down. That's the only way this is going to work.
Okay, so obviously that's just idiotic, first of all. Donald Trump allegedly lost in 2020. Did he leave the White House, folks? Do you not remember the last 4 years of the Biden administration? Biden-Harris. And notice he's using the exact same language she used in the past. Right? They're not. This is referring to the George Floyd riots in the summer of 2020. They're not going to let up. They should not let up. They will not let up. And he's saying the same exact thing. Almost like he was coached to say it. They should not let up. They need to go out there and show all this completely and utterly unfounded. Again, just lies. He's not going to leave office unless you go out there and protest. Really? A bunch of obese elderly people in the streets are going to make Donald Trump, if he's a king, leave office? Really? I mean, it's just ridiculous. He went on to attack Stephen Miller, who's one of the advisors to President Trump. And he said he set it up with, I guess he's the Goebbels of the cabinet, Stephen Miller. He's a Nazi. Yes, he is. And he's Jewish, and he should be ashamed of himself. I don't even understand where this is coming from. First of all, Goebbels, Stephen Miller is an advisor to President Trump, folks. He has no executive power really to force or do anything. He is an advisor to the president. So the idea that, again, he's the Goebbels just spouting off. Okay, so what's he lying about? Where's the propaganda? Bobby, come on, tell us. Where's the intense propaganda that Stephen Miller's putting out right now? Now, we know he's very vocal when he comes out and he speaks his mind. Okay, that's fine. We have a First Amendment. He could do that. But where is he going out there and putting out completely false propaganda? Can anyone point to that? I can't. Again, it's all nonsense. He's going out there and calling a Jewish man a Nazi. And by the way, let's just set the record straight, by the way, just so we're all clear on this. The National Socialist German Workers' Party never referred to themselves as Nazis, just so we're all clear on this. By the way, that's a fact. They never called themselves Nazis. That was a name coined by a Jewish journalist at the time. And that's how they were referred to, as Nazis. But they never went out there and called themselves, hey, Nazi, hey, Nazi. They never did that. Or joined the Nazi. That was never called that. That's not what it was. And again, I refer you to go listen to any speeches by any of them. No one calls themselves Nazis. Ever. Ever. And the other problem, too. And I'm sure most of you have never heard this fact, so I'll share it with you as well. The German SS had about 150,000 people of Jewish ethnicity in it that were either half or a quarter Jewish. Now, I'm sure that's going to startle some of you saying, what? There's no way. Well, yes, it is. That's the truth. Again, you've never heard it, but that is the truth. So again, I don't know where De Niro gets off saying all this stuff. What he's talking about here makes absolutely no sense. He's just rambling on. He's there as someone who hates Donald Trump, so they're going to bring him on. He's a name, obviously, in Hollywood. And it's again, you saw it all weekend. You saw it from Bill Nye the Science Guy. Remember that? Yeah, he was out there. He was asked about climate change. Yeah, when the world's going to end. What did he say to that?
How much time do you think before the world ends?
No, thank you.
Oh, it'll be some time. Yeah. The Earth's going to be here no matter what we do. I want to preserve the Earth and its environment for us. And pretending that climate change isn't happening.
Oh, so he said, pretending like climate change isn't real is, he doesn't know what to say because he's a mechanical engineer and he has no degree in science, by the way. Just thought I'd share that part with you. Yeah, Bill Nye the Science Guy. That's what I call him. He's not a scientist, but he wears the bow tie. He had the show because he won a comedian contest or some nonsense like that. They gave him a show. Who knows? He's a script reader, folks. He's an actor. That's what he is. He has a mechanical engineering degree from Cornell. Okay, great. I'm glad he's got that. That's working with building machines. I don't know what that has to do with understanding climate change. Not that you can't understand climate change if you're a mechanical engineer, but he's not a complete scientist. It's not like he's a climate scientist, okay, sharing his information. And that's just one of the many examples of this weekend. Simply people out there bashing Trump, saying they're standing up for climate change and things of that nature. So again, it's all the leftist hyperbole into one. That's what this weekend was. For climate change, for transgenderism, for the LGBTQ, WTUV, all this stuff. All this stuff. The protection of illegal aliens, that's one of their big focal points for the Democrats. But here, I got a good article that goes right into what I'm talking about here. And it just shows you that Bill Nye doesn't read, folks. It's very sad. He should read more. Especially as a science guy. You'd think he would read this nonsense. And look into it. But this was published earlier last month. It says, Blockbuster sea level study may turn climate change orthodoxy on its head. What could this mean? It says global sea levels have not continued to rise at the rates predicted by many scientists. And there is no evidence that climate change has contributed to any such acceleration. A new first-of-its-kind study has claimed. Now, of course, again, if you've studied this, like I have, you would notice, you can take a picture from like 1800 and look at the sea level and where it is today in America, and it's in the exact same spot. So there is no, sea level rise. They put this propaganda out constantly. Leonardo DiCaprio put out DiCaprio, excuse me, put out a puff piece several years ago called, I think it was called The Coming Flood or something along those lines. I forget. It was a bunch of nonsense. But they pushed this out to children. That's how I learned about it. Because I was teaching at a school at the time. The kids told me they learned about this, documentary and how the, sea levels are going to rise. Climate change is the most important thing in the world. And I go, really? Okay. So in the documentary, what did they tell you about how much CO2 is in the atmosphere? They didn't say that. Oh, really? So how much is in the atmosphere? Do you know? 50%, 20%, 75%. I go 0.4%. And you think it's causing the global meltdown? Really? Okay. Well, carbon dioxide's poison. No, it's not. It's plant food, folks. Anyways, the research found that the average sea level rise in 2020 was only around 1.5 millimeters per year, or 6 inches per century, according to the paper's authors. This is significantly lower than the 3 to 4 meters per year often reported by climate scientists in scientific literature and in the media. So, these people need to, I guess, read instead of just going over NASA talking points or NOAA talking points or left-wing climate activists talking points. I mean, it just destroys everything. We've seen 1.5 millimeters rise in certain places. We've seen 1 meters less in certain places. When I was in LA, I lived right by the beach. Nothing changed. Same damn beach always. There's no sea level rise. There's no encroaching water coming into the Santa Monica Bay out of the beaches. But this is how they sell to you. The beaches are going to flood. You're not going to be able to live there. It's going to be catastrophic. First of all, if this were true, by the way, let's say it was true, you wouldn't be able to buy a house. You wouldn't be able to get insurance. You wouldn't be able to buy a house on the beach or anywhere in California, by the way, because they would know. By the way, anywhere else in America too, any place you'd have beachfront property, you wouldn't be able to sell it. There's no way insurance companies are going to be able to afford that if your house is going to be flooded and, of course, destroyed in 10 years, 5 years, whatever they claim it was. They wouldn't make that investment. So even on just a general standpoint, that they're full of nonsense. They wouldn't do this. They would invest in it. Why would they invest in something that's going to be destroyed? Because all it is a bunch of nonsense. It's to get you to stop eating meat, go to plant meat. It's supposed to stop you from driving your car, ride your bike instead, or, drive an EV, which, again, most of them are junk. Again, you buy whatever the hell you want. What the hell do I care? But this is the idea. They want to be able to control you. Control what you eat, control what you drive, control where you go, how far you can go, all that. It all comes down to control, folks. So just understand that, please. All right, moving on. The Associated Press has a good article on the Supreme Court will now consider whether people who regularly smoke pot can legally own guns. Who didn't see this coming? Of course I saw this coming. Isn't it a wonder when, kids at a very young age are, given Ritalin and all these other psychotropic drugs, antidepressants. Now they're given puberty blockers if they think they're the opposite sex, of course. Now they're coming after people that are smoking weed or abusing marijuana, which again is pushed upon kids as, it's safe, it's benign, don't worry about it. That's also a bunch of nonsense, too. That's another time for another day, though. But now the Supreme Court on Monday said that it would now consider whether people who regularly smoke marijuana can legally own guns. The latest firearm case to come before the court since the 2022 decision expanding gun rights. Now, the Trump administration asked the justices to revive a case against a Texas man charged with a felony because he allegedly had a gun in his home and acknowledged being a regular pot user. So now the Justice Department appealed it after a lower court largely struck down the law that bars people from use of any illegal substances or drugs from having access to firearms. So let's pause and think about this. They push this on children now, right? You smoke weed, it's fine, it's better than tobacco, which it's not actually. Actually, it's 4 times the amount of carcinogens in it and still gives you carbon monoxide and all that other great stuff. Lots of chemicals in it still. It also, like anytime, you ingest anything hot, your body views it as an attack. So now that's going into your lungs. It's not good for you. And obviously we have the THC component of it. Obviously it destroys neurons in the brain. It's not good, folks. So if you think it's, hey, I smoke weed every once in a while, it's benign, it's not going to do anything, it's a plant. Okay, first of all, it is bad for you. It does have harmful side effects, these virulent side effects that affect your body. and you shouldn't use it. So now what happens, let's say, let's just say as a teen, you're abusing weed and you're smoking constantly, and you become an adult, you continue on, right? You have your little medical marijuana card. They'll have to hand out now, right? And now, let's say you want to buy a firearm. Your friends are going to the range, maybe you just want it for personal safety or what have you. And they come to and say, okay, you have to fill out this form, which everyone does when they buy a firearm, the federal release form. You have to be honest about and fill out it, unless, of course, you're Hunter Biden, then you can lie on it, of course. Remember, he was on using cocaine heavily at the time, and he lied about it and still obtained a firearm that he discarded next to an elementary school, right? Wonderful. That's the president's son for you. On this form now, they could say, are you a chronic marijuana user? And if you click yes, your application is going to get denied. The FBI is going to look at it and say, nope, can't give it to him. Uh-oh. See how that works? So I say this to you because this is what they do. They're trying to find more ways to circumvent your way and your right to own a firearm to have. So now they could say, okay, if you're a chronic marijuana user, drug user, no firearm. No, I'm not saying it's a good thing if you're high on drugs to own a firearm. Again, I don't think any of that's conducive or conducive to a better lifestyle. But this is what they're trying to do. The sooner you get kids on these, the Ritalin, the antidepressants, these other drugs, these hormonal drugs that they try to put kids on, these puberty blockers, not good. So now the government can come in and say, if you're on any of these types of drugs, you can't own a firearm now. See how easily they can cut people off from owning that? And again, that's their plan completely by this. So now the arguments will take place early in 2026 with a decision likely in early summer. The Republican administration favors Second Amendment rights, but the government attorneys argue that this ban is a justifiable restriction. So we'll see how this ends up, folks. We'll see how it goes for the dope smokers who think, everything's benign, everything's great. It's okay to just, smoke a joint every day. No consequences. Well, there are consequences to actions, folks. And again, kids should not be using drugs at all. Their minds are still developing, and obviously it's going to cut blood flow to the brain. It's obviously going to cut oxygen flow to the brain, especially in a developing brain. It's certainly not a good thing. I think we all can agree on that. Gavin Newsom, though, probably one of the lowest of lows. Newsom now hides a bailout for utility companies, passing billions of cost onto consumers in the great state of California. The gift that keeps on giving. Right, folks? The LA Grimes noted in fine print in a 254-page bill known as SB 254, a massive bill compared to most state legislation, lets Southern California Edison and other utility companies charge consumers for wildfire damages that exceed $21 billion, which is likely the case, of course, on the Eaton fire that we saw in burning up parts of Altadena, Pasadena back on January 7th of this year. I lived through that. I actually saw it. It was horrific, by the way. The people are continuing to lose everything. Now, other amendments in the 231-page bill known as SB 254 help not just SoCal Edison, but three of the state's largest for-profit utilities, further limiting the cost that they and their shareholders would face if the company's equipment ignited a catastrophic wildfire. That's what the LA Grimes notes. So think about this. You have old technology, you have old power lines and what have you, and they damage over time, they break, and they cause these fires when it's times when it's really hot outside, right? And when it's hot, then obviously there's more brush, it easily ignites, and then you have a wildfire on your hands. So now there's safeguards in this bill, such as a review of cost for the Public Utilities Commission, are essentially toothless ads, which require victims of wildfires and consumers to now cover the wildfire cost for years before being compensated. Yeah, there it goes, passing it out, the buck onto you, folks. This legislation has revived concerns about the fact that Newsom and other politicians in the state have also taken large campaign contributions. Yep, he takes a lot of money from PG&E, especially. Consumer advocates also complain that SB 254 and a law in 2019, also signed by Gavin Newsom, AB 1054, that limited utility companies' liability were both rushed through the legislature without careful review or debate. Well, that's what they hope for. They hope you're not paying attention. They hope you're paying attention to something Trump does, and you're forgetting everything about what your state's doing to screw you. That's how it works. So now SB 254 was one of those passed before the public could even analyze what Newsom was signing and why. Yep, he didn't come out and run his mouth about that, did he, folks? And again, SoCal Edison is widely believed to have caused the Eaton wildfire, which allegedly resulted from a faulty power line. Again, we have power lines in the state of California that are over 100 years old, by the way. They're not updated. They're not renewed. Sometimes you have faulty power grids as well. Again, these things get damaged, they break, and again, they cause these fires to spiral out of control. Spread flames, high winds. You saw the Santa Ana winds pushing those fires all around in Southern California, the Palisades especially. And the massive disaster caused over $60 billion of damage. And then, of course, you had fire hydrants that had no water in it, which helped escalate the problem even further. All right, one last article, folks, before we leave today. This is one I'll go over quickly. It's in The Hill. It says that GOP senator has deep concerns over Trump plan to import Argentine beef. Uh-oh. Is he helping out Melee again? What's happening here? Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska, a member of the Senate Agricultural Committee, says that she has deep concerns over the Trump administration's plan to import Argentina beef to bring prices down in the United States, something that has sparked an angry backlash from American ranchers. She went on to say in a social media post, since hearing the president's comments suggesting that the United States would benefit from beef from Argentina, I've been in touch with his administration and my colleagues to seek clarity and express my deep concerns. Bottom line, if the goal is addressing beef prices at the grocery store, this isn't the way. Right now, the government's intervention in the beef market would only hurt our cattle ranchers. And so, okay, let's break this down for a second. She adds on to, she says, safe, reliable beef. Warren, Nebraska's ranchers cannot afford to have the rug pulled out from under them when they are just getting ahead or simply breaking even. That's what's happening to a lot of these small ranchers, these local farmers, or what have you. So Donald Trump wants to bring in more supply. But instead of propping up our American agriculture, he's now going to get it in from elsewhere, which means you have to ship it in, which is going to cost more. And the market itself right now is roughly controlled. I think it's 84% is controlled by four major packers. You have Tyson, you have Cargill, JBS, and National Beef are the four big ones that slaughter beef and of that nature for burgers and steaks and what have you. And the smaller guys that do their own operations, right? They're the ones getting hosed because they can't, compete with these bigger companies, these bigger corporations. So now we're going to bring in beef from Argentina and expect that to solve the prices? I don't think so. And again, I've been talking to you about this too. I've been talking to you about how the processing plants that have been down in this country too, they haven't been restored. That's a big problem. That's something that's chaotic too, by the way. And you also have things like the fact that some of these operations go out of business. They go out of business. They can't keep up. And again, if you can't keep up with the prices, right? If you can't compete with Cargill or JBS, one of the biggest in the world, by the way, what are you going to do? How are you, a small operation, going to compete with that? Especially the price demands, the price to do it all on your own, slaughtered on your own. And again, mostly is better quality than any of these others. Just thought I'd share that part with you too. So folks, we got to look out for our local farmers. It's very important. We should always be doing that. Folks, thanks for being here with me as always. I'll catch you tomorrow on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, God bless.